Celebration time. It don't matter what part of the jewel you come from. You da you and me da me. But guess what? All are we the one. See what I mean? Jump and shout all over the nation. We're breaking out with a new creation.
Delhart Courtney worked at BC for 7 decades before retiring. He spoke with our Belize Watch team about his time with the company and as an adjuster for Lloyds. We will have that conversation, but first we take a break to hear from our partners. Belize Natural Energy Charitable Trust, the Barry, Shell Belize, and the National Gas Company.
Shell V-Power, with 3 times more cleaning and friction-reducing molecules. Go well. Go Shell. Since 2008, the Belize Natural Energy Charitable Trust has created opportunities for Belizeans to develop themselves and their communities. The trust employs tools that are intuitive, collaborative, and accessible so that every Belizean is empowered to achieve their full potential. Over 200,000 Belizeans have been impacted because of our various initiatives. The Belize Natural Energy Charitable Trust, empowering Belizeans of today to create the Belize of tomorrow.
We are the Barry, offering you great products, good service, and of course, the lowest prices in the entire country. Visit us in Belize City, Belmopan, San Ignacio Cayo, Orange and now in San Pedro, La Isla Bonita. The Barry. Get more? Be less.
Let's be real. Forget the propaganda. Forget the hype. Forget the gimmicks. When it comes to butane, only 2 things really matter: the value you get and how long you can stretch your dollar. That's it. Butane is my business. It's how I feed my family. It's how I send my kids to school. What matters to you matters to me. With NGC, the quality of the butane is better. In fact, customers say tanks last as much as 2 weeks longer. And the cost, it's 1 cost period, whether you pick it up in the north, south, or by Belmopan. 1 supplier, 1 cost, no games. This lets me compete on a fair basis, and I can then pass on better prices to you, my customers. It's as simple as that. I am Stephen Bissett, and I deliver butane in the Belize district. NGC has been good for us in Belize. We welcome the transparency, we welcome the better product, and we welcome the fairness that now prevails.
The National Gas Company Belize Limited, fueling Belize forward.
It don't matter what part of the jewel you come from.
And welcome to this edition of Belize Watch. And today we'll be looking at not too much known organization that has affected the growth and development of Belize. We are talking about the Corporation of Lloyds. The Corporation of Lloyds. With me is Delhart Courtney, who will be walking us through what the Corporation of Lloyds is all about. I've heard about Lloyds of London, and I must confess, this is something I'm looking forward to learn, because it's something I'm not familiar with, the role that this company, this corporation, Lloyd, played in the development of our beloved country, Belize. Mr. Courtney, welcome to our Belize Watch show, and maybe you can start off, sir, by just reminding us of your connection with Lloyds of London, or Lloyds, the company.
Thank you, Doctor. Remember the last time I was here, I mentioned that Belize Estate and Produce Company Limited became the Lloyds agents in 1899. Now, I would like to take it back to the genesis of Lloyds. Lloyds was founded in 1686 by a man called Edward Lloyd. He had a coffee shop at a place called Pope's Head in the London docks. And merchants and insurance companies used to go there to do business in his coffee shop. he didn't do anything in the business. He had no affair in their business. All he did was provide them with the venue to do their business. And obviously they paid him some kind of fee to do the business in his coffee shop.
Mm-hmm.
That went on and on and on. Obviously Mr. Lloyd died, and his beneficiaries continued the business. And it became so big that in 1812 the insurance companies and the people at Lloyds realized that they were sending cargo worldwide, but they had no one at the different ports to look after their business. Mm-hmm. And so they encouraged Lloyds to form what was called the Lloyds Agency. That was founded in 1812. Lloyds selected prominent companies worldwide to be their agents. Mm-hmm. Now, what they did was that big countries like Australia and America, where the country was so large, they had more than one agency. But small countries like Belize, they only had one agency.
But Lloyd's in itself was what, an insurance corporation, an insurance company? What did they do? What exactly did they do besides meeting in this coffee shop?
There was no insurance company. They weren't concerned at all with insurance.
What were they doing?
They were just concerned in providing the venue where the people that did the insurance met. The insurance company and the merchants.
So they were facilitators, basically.
That's about it.
Uh-huh.
Yeah. So I'm saying in 1812, when both the underwriters and the merchants at Lloyds realized that they were sending cargo worldwide, but that they had nobody to look after their interest in the countries where the cargo was going, and so they asked Lloyds to form an agency, and so then Lloyds formed what was called the Lloyds Agency. And they selected agents worldwide.
Okay, and that's when they selected the BEC, the Belize Estate and Produce Company Limited at the time, to be.
But this was in 1899. I'm talking about 1812.
1812, okay.
At the time, BEC wasn't even founded yet.
Okay.
And so what they did in the big countries, they had more than one Lloyds agent. Also in 1812, they introduced what was called a daily shipping list, where the insurance companies at Lloyds knew where the cargo were at any time on these ships. Mm-hmm. And that still happens today, that the Lloyds agents send a shipping list to Lloyds at the department called now Lloyds Marine Intelligence Unit. That goes, small countries like Belize send once a week. We tell them how many ships came to Belize, the flag they're operating under, the tonnage, when they came to Belize and when they left. Mm-hmm. That still happens today. That's a criteria of being a Lloyds agent. Mm-hmm. So in 1899, Belize Estate applied for the agency, and being a big company, they got the agency, and then they began doing the same thing.
Okay, if we could look back a little bit now, and maybe marry in here the Belize Estate and Produce Company's genesis in Belize as to how they and take us up to how they became an agent of Lloyd. So when did the Belize Estate and Produce Company Limited start in Belize?
1875.
In 1875.
As I said in the book.
What brought them to Belize?
They came here because they were told that by the then governor and the Colsec that there was a vast amount of timber in British Honduras. Mm-hmm. And that's how we think they came here in 1875 and began their business.
Mm-hmm. And they started extracting this timber. Am I right in saying that? They started extracting the timber and exporting it to...
But in whole logs.
In whole logs. Also, yes. In whole logs. Okay. And they did that right through until the 1964 or somewhere.
When we got self-government. Uh-huh. The Minister of Internal Affairs and just told them no more whole logs. Every tree you fall in this country must be turned into timber and sold as timber.
Uh-huh. And so that was when they actually started the sawmill operations.
It was before that.
It was before that? Yeah. Okay. But let's concentrate on Lloyds a little bit. How did the Belize Estate and Produce Company Limited, that was actually extracting lumber from Belize or wood from Belize, what would cause them or lead them to become connected with Lloyds, a company like Lloyds?
They were branching out.
So Belize Estate wanted to branch out, and so they reached into different areas, and so they thought that this insurance company, Lloyds, would have been a good area to branch out.
Not only that, before that, in 1888, they became ship agents. They are the oldest ship agents in this country.
To Belize Estate and
They
Produce
are the
Company?
oldest ship agents in this country. They're the oldest.
Okay.
That began in 1888.
Okay.
All right?
I'm listening. So in 1888, they started representing shipping companies, and then Lloyds came into the picture, like you said,
1899.
in
Yes.
1899,
Yeah.
being connected with the shipping agencies. Go ahead.
Yes. So now I'm saying that in 1812 they formed this agency worldwide, where they have agents in every country, about 500 countries, and the large countries had more than one Lloyd's agency. Small countries like Belize and Jamaica, Guatemala only have one agency. In Belize, it's Belize State. All right. Now, these agencies represent not Lloyd's, you represent the insured at Lloyd's, people that the syndicate they're called names. The agencies represent those persons, look after their interests. And then through the agencies, these syndicates in London, they could know exactly what was happening to their cargo. So when they insured a cargo, the Lloyd's agency appointed surveyors. The surveyor was a between man between the insurer and the insured. I'm making sense to you?
Yeah.
All right. And so when the cargo arrived at, let's say, for instance, at Belize, the agency, the Lloyd's agency, would appoint a surveyor. If any of the cargo is missing or damaged, they would appoint a surveyor to go and represent the underwriter at Lloyd's.
Now the surveyor is obviously the key person. So there was one surveyor in Belize, or
No, we had when I joined, we had 5.
you had 5. When did you join?
1966. Now, when I became a surveyor,
Okay.
I joined BC 1949. I was in timber department. But when I transferred in 1966 to the Lloyd department, there were 5 surveyors. Why? Because in 66, Belize was still getting cargo in bulk, and there was 1 ton pilferage and stealing. Oh yes, man.
They used to thief the cargo, I think.
Huh?
They used to thief cargo.
Yes, sir.
How would someone steal a cargo?
Because the cargo was coming in bulk, in big
Oh,
bags.
there were not containers like we would
No,
have now that has to be
Which I will come
locked
to.
and
Which I will come to shortly.
Okay, but let's go back a little bit to Lloyd's coming into Belize and operating in Belize. Let's walk step by step. So now they're operating in Belize. They started off with, how did they have to start?
No, the agencies that operating. The
agencies.
agencies operating in Belize. And I'm saying the agency is there to represent the underwriter at Lloyd's, the insurer.
Okay, the insurer, okay.
Right? So in those days, I said cargo came into Belize in bulk. These big bags, and they were sitting there, and so there were random pilferage. When I joined in 66, there were 5 surveyors and 5 assessors. We took in something like 40 surveys, applications for surveys per week, 40. All right, and we had 5 surveyors, so each survey would do about 8 surveys for the week. All right, and that went on and on and on. But before I get to that, I mentioned to you that the shipping list that the agent supplied went to a department in Lloyd's called the LMIU, Lloyd's Maritime Insurance Unit. That shipping list went there, and they in turn would inform the underwriters where their cargo was on a particular ship. All right?
Okay, so they follow the whole process of the shipping as to the
That is
departure of
correct,
the
yeah.
cargo, where it is at a given time, and
Yeah.
when it arrives.
And I said, and that shipping list was a daily thing, and it happened worldwide every single day. That's one of the criteria for being a Lloyd's agent. You must send that list in Belize in Belize, instance, you send it once per week. But big countries like Amsterdam, which is the biggest port in the world, they maybe send 4 or 5 per week.
Okay.
And there was a person at Lloyd's operating at 24/7.
Okay.
So they know exactly what's happening to all the ships going worldwide. Also, the LMIU, Lloyd's Marine Intelligence Report, they deal with things like casualties, ship being arrested, ship grounded, stranded, or ship running aground, things like that. The agents, when something happens, the first person the agent tell is the LMIU before they tell anybody else.
The LMIU is
Lloyds Marine Intelligence Unit. Yeah.
Okay.
All right. So when the Lloyds agents hear about grounding, in Belize we would call the customs, but now we call the Belize Port Authority, and we get what has happened to the vessel, the coordinates, and tell the LMIU right away. And you follow up until the matter has been cleared up. Either the thing has been refloated, or the vessel has been destroyed. That's what the LMIU does.
LMIU, okay. And so let's look at the role of Lloyds now in Belize. What did they do for Belize?
All right, Lloyds, when they came in, when BC got the agency, the government told them that they had to do an investment in the country, and so they bought some treasury bonds, $100,000 worth of treasury bonds.
That would have been the British Honduras government at the time,
correct,
right?
Yeah.
The governor and his financial secretary and others, no?
And that still stands. Lloyds didn't take the money out.
So they bought these bonds. What bonds were these?
They bought treasury bills.
Treasury bills.
Yeah.
Issued by the government of British Honduras.
Correct, yes. That is still going on right now. Because Lloyds has not withdrawn the principal. All they do every year is take out the interest. So the government of Belize would send the interest to Belize Estate, and Belize sends it onward to Lloyds.
Okay.
Now they're doing it different now, because electronically now, so it would go from the government of Belize straight to Lloyds in London.
So you're saying that this initial investment that Lloyds made in the treasury bonds still exists up until today?
That is correct.
And the quantum is
$100,000.
$100,000.
On top of that.
But $100,000 then was quite different from $100,000 today,
correct.
right?
The point I'm making is they're still there, and
so it's still at $100,000.
Yeah. And what Lloyds has done, they had another department called the International Department, and that money goes there now. All right. Lloyds also pay to the Belize government $5,000 every month to operate here in Belize. In addition to that, the local insurance companies in Belize, they belong to an association called ORINCO. ORINCO is the acronym for Organization of Insurance Companies. They all belong to that. And each of them pay 2.5% of the total premium taken in a year to that department, to the supervisory insurance companies.
So all that was started by Lloyds. That's what you were saying. They were the first insurers that came into the country and really would be considered then as the parent of all the insurance companies that are around, or the insurance industry.
No, they are the reinsurance.
Or the reinsurance industry.
All the insurance companies believe that belong to Oringo, they have reinsurance at Lloyds.
At Lloyds, okay.
All right. So all the insurance companies in Belize, they have agreement with syndicates at Lloyds. They call them names, where that for the premium, the reinsurer at Lloyds gets so much, and the local insurer gets so much. Same with a claim. Sometimes 80% or 70-30. Right? The big names at Lloyds are Cooper Gay and Hog Robinson. Those are large reinsurers. They are owned by Lloyds, so and so and Lloyds, so and so and so. And they collect from the local insurance company in Belize here, whatever they agree on, 70-30 or 80-20, whatever it is. That for premiums. Same thing for claim. When there's a claim, the insurer at Lloyd will pay the 80%, and the incoming payer will pay up to 20%. Depends what arrangement they have.
So walk me through it as a simple layman now. If I go and I get an insurance, take out a life insurance policy, what happened? I pay the insurance company premiums that are demanded of me, but what does that insurance company eventually do? How does that reinsurance thing work with Lloyds?
It depends on the arrangement the local insurance company has with the name at Lloyds.
Okay.
Like I said, some companies 80-20, some 70-30. So if they have to pay you any money, the insurer at Lloyds will pay 70%, and the insurer here will pay 30%. So you get the whole 100%. All right?
Okay.
All right?
I get it. Lloyds is just it's a company that you insure you as an insurance company insure your liabilities
at Lloyds,
against.
At Lloyds, yes.
At Lloyds. So when somebody claim liabilities from you, you claim back from Lloyds.
That is
a
correct.
certain percentage,
Yeah.
whatever agreed percentage
Yeah.
it is. All right.
This is about to show you. This is how the corporation looks now.
Okay.
That's the Lloyd building right there.
Wow.
It's in the business district of London. That's number one Lime Street.
I've been to.
No, from a small thing, from a coffee house, the corporation of Lloyd now is worth billions of pounds. Billions of pounds. They insure spaceships, satellites, anything you do, they insure it. They insure football players' legs, concert pianists' hands, things like that. They insure anything.
So they are number one insurers in the world. That's what you're telling me.
I'm saying that the market there, the Lloyd, the corporate Lloyds, that market is the biggest in the world. The counterpart is one in America called the AMIU, American Institute of Marine Underwriters. That's the counterpart, but it's smaller. The biggest one is at Lloyd's. All right. Now the Lloyd's Corporation of Lloyd's is so renowned that even companies that don't work there still use them for the service. So companies in the Far East, in the Middle East, things like China and Japan, when they issue that certificate, you will see at the bottom it says, in the event of a damage or loss, contact the Lloyd's agency. So although they don't operate at Lloyd's, they depend on the Lloyd's agent where the goods are gone to get work done for them. All right?
Now, your association with Lloyd, you said, began back when you were at BEC. Remind me of the year when it started and of the work that you did with Lloyd's.
Myself?
Yes.
Since 1966, I started there.
And then you work with Lloyd's?
Now I work with Belize State.
Belize State?
The agency.
But you handled the Lloyd's business portfolio for BEC.
When I left there, I was a supervisor of the insurance companies. I was a supervisor of the department.
Okay.
All right? And I left in 2019.
Okay. Because you spent, 70 years of your life there at BEC?
That is correct.
Which means that you know the whole story of BEC?
That is correct.
All right. So
the other matter I want to discuss with you is Lloyd's, the corporation of Lloyd's, the names that operate there, they have protection from what is called P&I clubs. Now, P&I clubs, that's another department of research. They insure ship owners against liability. For instance, you own a ship, and the ship goes aground, and you lose everything. You apply to what they call a P&I club, and they will pay you. All right?
P&I.
Yeah.
What's P stands for what and where N stands
Protection
for?
and indemnity.
I stand for.
Protection and indemnity.
Okay.
Now the P&I clubs, when they have a case like that, they appoint a person called a salvage operator. If the ship can be salvaged, they usually their certificate say no cure, no pay. Meaning if you don't report the vessel, they don't pay you. But sometimes they will put in what they call a scopic clause, where they will make certain conditions that if you take off all the fuel and take out the engine, we'll give you so much. It's called a scopic clause. So sometimes they can't report the ship.
Okay.
So they take off all the parts of that they can use and for you to get the hull off the leak into deep water and sink it.
Have you had any examples of what you're talking about that happened in Belize?
We have one right now.
Tell me what it.
2005, a vessel called the MV Transport brought in cargo at the port of Belize. When the pilot left the ship at English Key, something went awry with the person at the helm, and you run the boat and you leave up north at Lighthouse Reef, and you sail there. Yeah.
So
that's about rotting hull now.
What happened in that case? How was that case handled?
In that case, they insured the P&I paid the government of Belize for damage to the reef, and they paid the owners of the vessel. And the vessel was right there, and it was cannibalized.
Okay.
There were several companies offered to do salvage work, But the owners felt that it was too, the loss of the ship was too small to warrant go to salvage. And so they just left right there. So it's right there now. And the last I heard, there was nothing on the hull, because the people went there and they just cannibalized it, took out the engine, took out everything.
So what else could you tell me of Lloyd's involvement in Belize, besides what we have spoken about?
Well, that they still operate here.
They still operate here?
Yeah. And they also dictate the premium that the insurance companies charge you in Belize for the insure properties. Why? Because they say that Belize is what they call a high-risk area. And that is why our premiums are so high for property insurance and any kind of insurance. Because we're in a high-risk area. All right? The other matter has to do with what is called an average clause. Again, the underwriters at Lloyds has decided that if you underinsure your property and you have a loss, they take what you insured for, multiply it by your loss, and divide by what you should have insured for, and the investment you get. For instance, if you insure your house for $100,000, and suppose you have insurance for $150,000, they multiply the 100 by if you lost, you just have too much that you lost half of the house, $50,000. They won't give you that. You multiply that figure by what you were insured for and divide by the $150,000, you end up paying $33,000.
Okay.
All right? That's called an average clause.
Okay.
All right? The other matter has to do with how Lloyds, how the insurance companies at Lloyds, how they manipulate the system. For instance, they would tell the local insurance companies here that you have to put up, if a person insure this and that, you have to they have different clauses. For instance, that because you insure your cargo, it means that you get a loss, you will get the money for it. It all depends how you insured it.
Yeah.
All right? The other matter I think has to do with, I think I picked up told about the LMI already. The Lloyds has become so reputable that all insurance companies now worldwide, they respect the agency department in all the different countries. Lloyds does not allow you to work outside of your jurisdiction. For instance, we can't go and do survey in Mexico. So when you're appointed a Lloyds surveyor, they give you a certain geographical location that you can operate in. Now we had this experience that we used to do surveys to Chetumal.
Okay.
Because the nearest Lloyds agent in Mexico, in Chetumal, was a place called Morelos.
Part of Morelos.
Yes. And when the people in Chetumal got that person to do survey, they had to bring him to Chetumal.
It was closer to bring somebody from Belize.
Okay, they had to feed him, house him, and then pay the survey fee. They found it was too much, and so they used our agency.
Okay.
And Lloyds tell them they can't do that. So now I think there's a law agency now near to them. I think in Cancun, one of the places they have the agency now. So they have cut off, so we don't do that anymore. The Lloyds does not allow an agent to operate in another agency's jurisdiction unless the agent can't do the work. Maybe let's assume that you are an agent for say Honduras, and you get an application for something you can't handle. You call another agency, maybe it's Belize or Guatemala, and say, we have survey for so and so, then you can do that. But you can only go work outside of your district if you are asked by an agent of the district and the thing happens in, and you can't do the work anymore.
So Lloyds basically has outlived the Belize Estate and Produce Company Limited, because Lloyds is still operating under BEC, which is the Belize Estate Company.
When the company was sold to a man called Delhart.
Delhart. Yeah, it was Delhart who made it.
Delhart Salvage boy. All right.
When we come back, Courtney speaks about the book he authored a few years ago. He also spoke a bit on the history of the logging industry.
Shell V-Power, with 3 times more cleaning and friction-reducing molecules. Go well. Go Shell. Since 2008, the Belize Natural Energy Charitable Trust has created opportunities for Belizeans to develop themselves and their communities. The trust employs tools that are intuitive, collaborative, and accessible so that every Belizean is empowered to achieve their full potential. Over 200,000 Belizeans have been impacted because of our various initiatives. The Belize Natural Energy Charitable Trust, empowering Belizeans of today to create the Belize of tomorrow.
We are Barry, offering you great products, good service, and of course, the lowest prices in the entire country. Visit us in Belize City, Belmopan, Sa Ignacio Cayo, Orange, and now in San Pedro, La Isla Bonita. Barry. Get more? Be less.
Let's be real. Forget the propaganda. Forget the hype. Forget the gimmicks. When it comes to butane, only two things really matter: the value you get and how long you can stretch your dollar. That's it. Butane is my business. It's how I feed my family. It's how I send my kids to school. What matters to you matters to me. With NGC, the quality of the butane is better. In fact, customers say tanks last as much as 2 weeks longer. And the cost, it's one cost period, whether you pick it up in the north, south, or by Belmopan. One supplier, one cost, no games. This lets me compete on a fair basis, and I can then pass on better prices to you, my customers. It's as simple as that. I am Stephen Bissett, and I deliver butane in the Belize district. NGC has been good for us in Belize. We welcome the transparency, we welcome the better product, and we welcome the fairness that now prevails.
The National Gas Company Belize Limited, fueling Belize forward.
It don't matter what part of the jewel they come from.
Mr. Courtney, you have served the Belize Estate and Produce Company in several capacities, including the adjuster for Lloyds and what have you, in so many capacities for 70 years. Now, that's an impressive record. It's difficult for me to find another Belizean who has served one organization for 70 years. That means you know that organization inside out, right? I admire what you have written about the Belize Estate and Produce Company Limited 1875 to 2019. I read it with a lot of interest because, as a matter of fact, let me tell you, just yesterday I was in the Hillbank area, right? And so I recalled very much what I read in your book about the importance of the Hillbank area and Galanjog and what have you. Have not been to Galanjog yet, but I have pictured, I've done shows on Hillbank, and I've seen where the railroad used to run between Galanjog and Hillbank. It's about 35 miles long railroad, right?
Something like that.
Something like that. It was set up by the same Belize Estate and Produce Company Limited that we're talking about.
It,
They were the ones that set us out.
And that's how they got cargo from point A to point B.
So to point B, yeah.
Plus personnel.
And then from there it was floated down the New River Lagoon, down the New River, out into the sea. Lloyds Bight.
Then down the coast.
Down the coast.
To the mangrove out of 3 miles. That's
right. I have traveled that whole route, you know. Lloyds Bight, everything. I've done all of that because it's a history that I find very fascinating. A historical part of our country development I find very fascinating.
Good to know, sir. Good to know.
Right.
Proud of
you know. So Britain signed the 1859 border treaty with Guatemala, which established the then boundaries of British Honduras, which we know as today's Belize, which we love so much. You know, it's our country, Belize. Belize became a British Honduras, then as it was known, became a crown colony in 1871. Now, in your book, you reflect a lot on the early days. What, as far as you could remember, what was Belize like in 1871 prior to the arrival of the Glickston conglomerate, as you put it?
1871?
Yeah.
Oh, well,
when we became a crown colony of Britain.
You remember after the record I mentioned to you that where your building sits on used to be a cow corral.
Yeah.
Remember I had to mention that to you? Yeah. When I was a boy, Mr. Dr. Bioneba, and there was no road between Belize and Cayo.
Yeah.
So they
river boats.
Yeah. And so they send the cattle from the Cayo in these flat bottom rubber boats, and they would tow the barge to in front of Millard Wharf. Remember Millard building? They would tie up right there. And they had the cattle I in some kind of harness. And then they ran them down North Front Street and came here into the corral.
Yeah.
And from here they walked them to the slaughterhouse.
That's why we live on Slaughterhouse Road today.
Correct.
Right. So Courtney, you have served BEC, well, previously known as the Belize Estate and Produce Company Limited, for 70 years, and that's an impressive record of service, which I think is second to none in this country.
Thank you.
I personally have done broadcasting here in Belize for 55, 56 years, but I'm not close and reached 70 years yet, for sure. Let's look at your life briefly and your work at BC, how you started and what have you. I know we did it in previous, but we want to recap again.
I went there in 1949 as a messenger. And then eventually I became what is called a tallyman. It means you tallied the lumber. And then I was promoted up into the office in 1958 as the stockist, where you kept the inventory of all the timber in the yard. And then I became the paymaster after that.
Wow.
Yeah. So I became paymaster in 1959. I was paymaster. So in Hattie, I was the paymaster, and I was paymaster in the estate. Then in 1966, Mr. James Murphy, he was the manager of the timber operation.
And he enticed you to go to the timber operation?
He took me with him.
Oh.
Yeah,
Oh yeah,
Jim Murphy. Yeah.
I know Jim.
All
I
right.
know about Jim, yeah.
All right. He was the manager of the timber operation, and then they offered him a promotion to the Lloyds agency as the manager, and he took me with him, 1966.
And that's when you went to Lloyds?
1966.
1966.
And he put me under a senior surveyor by the name of Mr. Dan Tucker. I began learning the survey work.
Now let's look at Belize, at the BEC now, the Belize Estate and Produce Company. What attracted the Belize Estate and Produce Company to Belize, and how did they come to be in Belize in the first place?
Just as totally because they knew that they were told that there was a vast amount of timber in this country to be exploited.
And in what area of the country did they start their operations?
The first thing they did when they came here was to buy a lot of land. They bought a lot of land. There was one time when BEC owned a third of this country in land. 1/3.
1/3 of Belize was owned by the Belize Estate and Produce Company of Great Britain.
That is correct.
Wow, that's a lot of land.
Yeah. And when they were about to leave, they began selling those. And they're trading off for taxes, and so that's how they get to that piece right here. BC layout. They sold up they trade up against taxes.
Okay, that's the BC layout here where we are at right now recording this show.
Yeah.
Was a part of the BEC land.
There was timber all the way along here.
Yes, and this was a sawmill area and
over there was a sawmill where the coke depot is.
Yeah.
There's a big sawmill there.
Yeah.
Massive sawmill.
Now, I want to look at in your book. You describe about how they purchase all this land and what have you, and they branch out into other areas, including production of chicle and what have you. So it was not only the logwood and not only the mahogany they were after, but they also branched out into chicle.
Yeah, they put the chicle to Wrigley in Chicago. Because you bear in mind that in the old days, chewing gum, the base was chicle. The chicle chewing gum,
yeah,
the base was chicle.
The chicle tree, Sapadera tree.
And it keeps clicking from here. But the Japanese invented a synthetic gum, and so it killed the chicle trade automatically.
I remember as a little boy, I used to go to the warehouse, the Belize Estate and Produce Company warehouse, and see tons of chicle.
Yes, sir.
That were stored in that warehouse.
In jute bags.
Yeah, that's right.
And where they do this, the warehouse was next to the river. Just bring the barge right there.
And then load
them on there and went to the ship.
And to the ship.
I went to the States.
No, I could also remember as a little boy passing there, being able to sometimes push a hand through, because it wasn't like it was completely boarded up. It had like,
I remember it.
You know,
you could pinch off a piece of it.
And you pinch off a piece of chicle.
You go through a thing whole day, you know, man.
I know.
Break away.
Yeah, I remember doing, you know, as little boys.
It doesn't break up, you chew it whole day, and it doesn't break up.
And I think they knew that people would do that, you know, because no one ever stopped us from doing it, you know. You pinch a piece of chicle and you chew that all the way to school, you know. I can remember that. So the operations now, let's go back to one of the places that fascinates me, and that's the Gallon Jug operation, the Gallon Jug Hillbank Railroad system. A lot of us don't know that that was a very successful railroad system. It was 35 miles of rails.
I know that, yeah.
Right? And 35 miles in those days on a rail was quite a lengthy railroad.
Yeah.
Right?
I think that was before one in Dangriga, the one in Sun Creek Valley.
Before the Sun Creek Valley Railroad.
Yeah, I think so, yeah.
Yeah.
I can make Mr. Kumar's bite.
Yep. But this particular railroad, you had tongues, little villages along the side where the train would stop and load, offload people. They also carried passengers and freight, right? Beside the logs, they carried passengers to and from.
No, the logs were put in the river at Gallon Jug.
At Hillbank.
At Hillbank, yeah. And then they came down. They went in the lagoon, then into the New River. And then go to sea.
But from Gallon Jug, did they take passengers from Gallon Jug down to Hillbank, where they would maybe catch a barge and come out to
Who?
The railroad. I'm talking about the train itself.
It was used strictly for the timber industry.
So it was just their
Bear in mind that at Gallon Jug, that was a big settlement, you know. They had a store they called a commissary, where people who were working in timber industry would go there and buy stuff. The workers and people living in Gallon Jug as well. They go to the commissary to buy things like a store.
No, the Belize Estate and Produce Company, right? To secure the freedom of operating in that area, from what I understand, and you tell me, right? Actually closed down, for the want of a better way of putting it, a few Maya Ikache villages that were in the area.
That is possible. I don't know.
And took them by barge to Orange Walk Tongue and resettled them in San Jose Palmar. Are you aware of that?
That is possible.
Are you aware of that?
No, I'm not. But bear in mind that BC owned all that land, so they got to move them.
So
BC own all those lands. All right.
All right. So they would cut the logs, take them to Hillbank, throw them in the New River Lagoon, and tug them out through the New River.
No, make the rafts.
Make the rafts.
Make the rafts.
Tell us about making rafts.
The raft, each raft had in 1,000 logs. And they used, remember, the book says that they use chain across the log, the log dog, which you hammer into the outer log and to hold the log together. And every section had that. And each raft would have 1,000 logs, and then they will be numbered from 8 to it. Normally 10. They do 10 rafts per season, and they would number them like that. And then the Althea would tow them down the New River to Orange Walk Tongue, where BC had an office there with a checker. And he would identify the logs, count them, and verify that all has passed there, and give a report. That report would go to London.
Okay.
And then the Juanita would take the raft from there to the Lloyds Bight and come out to the boat.
And then it will come out into the Corozal Bay, right, where the river empties into.
Yeah.
And then from the Corozal Bay, then will be towed
Down the coast.
down the coastline.
And then they tie the boat, we call it boat out there. They tie the raft up right at the raft there. Then it's from there, the smaller boat called a Dixie would take off sections to come down to the sawmill for the cut.
And the sections that they would cut off, Mr. Courtney, would be towed then through the mouth of the Haloa River, right?
It would the towed come down in the harbor, down the Haloa Creek, and to the sawmill over there.
The sawmill over there, yeah.
And they would then, by means of radio, the shipping manager, they would call him, it used to be a man called Rowe, Gordon Rowe. Gordon Rowe would tell them when he wants more logs to come in, and they would bring more logs until that crop is finished. Then they bring another one. Until the whole season is finished. Until they cut out all 10,000 logs.
So a season would have meant that 10,000 logs would have been cut. Now, one of the things that the Belize Estate and Produce Company Limited is accused of doing is of cutting these logs but not replanting.
That is true.
The book says that. It's in your book, and I've heard it before.
They began planting in 1957 when they realized, remember I mentioned in my book, that in January the hunters go out and they look for the trees that are merchantable, that should be felled. They call them the hunters. In 57, the hunters began finding less and less trees per square mile that were mature to be cut down. And then they realized that the trees are they're running out of trees.
Well, if they were cutting from 1875 to 1957, what would they expect?
They weren't paying it any mind.
They weren't paying it no mind, so obviously they run out of trees.
Yeah.
So
they began planting in 1957, and then they began experimenting with that tree called Melina. Melina is like cedar; it can withstand water. But again came Hurricane 61 and blew the whole thing down.
Now, when we talk about not finding the trees, how did they go about identifying these trees, the trees that were mature enough to be cut? And because you just can't cut a tree for cut a tree's sake. You have to go about identifying and marking the trees.
That is correct. The BEC had a man called a surveyor. When I joined the company, there was a man called Captain Milton. And he would go into the jungle with his assistant. At the time, when I joined, he had Nick Nesselman was the assistant. And he would look at the trees and see which one should be felled.
And he marks them, right?
And he marks them, yeah. And then the hunters go out and look for those, and then people who are going to fell come behind the hunters.
And then they said, oh, this is what they call a barbecue, and
that is correct.
And they chop the tree down.
Two man Sam and an axe.
And then you had tractors drawing the load out.
Oxen. In the early days.
Oxen. Before they get the tractors.
Yes, sir.
And then they put it on the...
Skidders and all those things came afterwards.
And then they put it on the railroad that ran from Hillbank, from Galanjog, and then they throw it in the River Lagoon, and then the operation you just described.
They make the raft there. From there, the boat will put it into...
And then they pull it down and what have you. Ever traveled the railroad, Mr. Courtney? You ever traveled?
I went there, but when I went there, it was
the Galanjog Railroad?
I used to go there to do what is called log scaling. Because I could scale logs.
Okay. What are scaling logs?
Let me show the formula.
You scale a log. Because when you tell me scale log, I think about cutting off the bark and that kind of thing there. You know? So I don't know. It's good that you show me that. So you're doing a very complicated mathematical thing there.
All right. Mean diameter minus 4 squared multiplied by length of 16.
Okay.
Will tell you exactly what kind of how much timber the log will give you.
Oh yeah?
Yes, sir. That's the formula.
So you knew that, so you had to measure that before for each log.
Yeah.
Square each log.
Yeah.
Each 1,000.
No, I didn't do that, you know. When the log scaler quit the company, They asked me to. I went there to teach them how to do it.
Okay.
So I went to Gallant Job. All right. And the man who was there, I taught him how to apply this thing. All right.
Okay. Now, mules in Belize town at the time, mules used to play a role in doing certain things, right? And the most famous of these mules was
Ramsey
Mule, right? And matter of fact, you still have that old song where say Ramsey Mule birthday and that sort of thing. Explain to us the role that these mules played in the production of lumber at the BEC Lumber Yard. Well, at that time, the Belize Estate and Produce Company Lumber Yard, which was in the same area where we are located right now, so House Road, etc.
Remember this man, yeah?
Yes, Ramsey, this is Ramsey.
Ramsey.
Well, it looks like Ramsey Mule.
Yeah, but I'm talking to a man, you know this man?
No.
That's Mr. Brown.
No. Okay, when you say a mule or a mule and cat, you think Ramsey automatically.
Yeah, that is true, because
famous mule Mr. Brown.
Mr. Brown.
Okay. And he's right in front of the Belize Estate and Produce office, which was at Bridgefoot, next to the fire station.
That is correct. That is still there, but they have solar building.
The solar building, right? Okay. And they have insurance, travel.
Now, let me explain to you about mule and cat in Belize.
What happened to the mule and cat?
You see Belize Bank? You see Mule Park, you know a place they call Mule Park?
Yes, it's a park, the mules there, the mule
exactly
and cat.
so.
Like taxi,
There were several big plum trees, and they provided shade all day. And the man, they just stick all the mules and mule and cat and they go right on there. So when you want a mule and cat, they go right there.
Yeah. For those who, young people, will tell them that would be exactly front of Belize Bank, front of the city center, where the city council's main office is.
That is correct.
That Mule Park, and all the mules
and
were
they
tied
still
up
call it Mule Park.
Yeah.
What they call used to be there. All right.
But we had no vehicles at that time, or little vehicles, right? Not many vehicles at all.
2 or 3.
Yeah.
Dr. Hushner.
You could count who had vehicles at that time.
Dr. Hushner had one. Mr. Coppin had one. About 3 or 4, number one that.
Yeah, my mind goes to an old picture that I saw. I don't know, you might have seen the same picture of a vehicle speeding along Cemetery Road, and you think it's somewhere in the Cayo district or somewhere, you know, but it's Cemetery Road.
Yeah,
no houses, no nothing.
As a small boy, this vehicle had this town had about the most 5 cars. And the most unique was Dr. Hushner. You used to carry one up, whoop, whoop. Because when you touch your hand, you press it up like that, and you say, whoop, whoop, whoop. And you had that can, you turn that can to start it up.
Yeah. So Ramsey Mule now, how Ramsey Mule used to play, what role used to play the lumber thing? How it used to work, the
Mr. Ramsey knew about his father. They used to work at the Belize Estate. His father.
Okay.
All right, he was hired by Belize Estate. That mule had onto the harness a box. And the box would be stationed on a thing they call a chute on the middle floor. And all the scraps that would slide down there and go into that box. When the box was full, Mr. Ramsey Mule just walk away and you take it somewhere and come and you dump it.
Oh, so it served like a dump truck basically, like what would we, today we'd use a dump truck, right?
Correct,
to do that. So the mule and cat would just go load on these chips, these unwanted pieces of lumber, and just take it and dump it.
And the mule, that thing happened so that the mule knows that when Mr. Moise says, walk, Jack, and the mule went. Yeah, they happened so a long time.
So so if we mule get famous, man, was he the only mule and cat doing that?
That was the only mule and cat that was done before 1951. In 51, when BEC opened another small mill, you see where stationary houses, they opened a small mill there in 51 to make dress lumber, dress spine, flooring, siding, things like that. And they produced they brought a man from England by the name of Ian Fadden. And they began producing pine fishes down in Mango Creek.
Okay.
They opened a small mill there, and he made fishes. Put them on a barge, they had a deck barge, and they came to the river there, and the company they built a railway from the river to the small sawmill, and the mule pulled those fishes up to the sawmill.
Okay.
To slice up into siding and flooring.
Wow. So the operations in Mango Creek, where Mr. Fadden, which explains Fadden Avenue
That is correct.
in Independence, the operation, the lumber was brought to Belize. Belize Town? Flitches were brought to Belize Town.
Yeah,
How did they bring it? By sea? Had to be by sea.
By sea, yes.
Yeah.
From Mango Creek.
By barge.
On deck barge.
Yeah. To a barge all the way from Mango Creek up to Belize Town at the time.
Yeah. And the barge came out and dock up by there.
By Slaughterhouse Road.
Yes.
Where Bowen and Bowen is.
And the
Ford Company is right now. Yeah.
Mr. Ramsey Mullers pulled it up to there. And put up our ramp up to the sawmill. And then the men would take it off, put it on a carriageway to go to the saw, and slice it up into timber. 1 by and 2 bys.
Okay.
And then there's also a mill on the foot to dress it. They dress it into siding, flooring, or whatever you wanted.
I could recall as a little boy, right, growing up on Freetown Road and passing in the area there, I could recall the high lumber shed with all sorts of lumber stuck in it, right?
Yeah, that is true.
Then they had this big boom that ran on a railroad track. There was this railroad track.
That's a crane. That's a crane.
Crane. Well, yeah, big crane.
Yeah.
Yellow. I think it was yellow.
Yellow is right. Yeah, that is correct.
And it ran on these tracks and would you'll see Pantata taking logs or lumber, pulling this or pulling that to the river. But it was a railroad track that actually ran.
But before that, they had a steam one. They had a steam crane before that. And sometimes that steam crane, when the steam crane picked up the bundle, was having this train with lever on one to tumble off the truck. So they scrapped that and they bought a diesel one with that diesel crane. Right?
We will wrap up our discussion with Delhart Courtney after we hear from our partners. Belize Natural Energy Charitable Trust, the Barry, Shell Belize, and the National Gas Company.
Shell V-Power with 3 times more cleaning and friction-reducing molecules. Go well. Go Shell. Since 2008, the Belize Natural Energy Charitable Trust has created opportunities for Belizeans to develop themselves and their communities. The trust employs tools that are intuitive, collaborative, and accessible so that every Belizean is empowered to achieve their full potential. Over 200,000 Belizeans have been impacted because of our various initiatives. The Belize Natural Energy Charitable Trust, empowering Belizeans of today to create the Belize of tomorrow.
We are the Barry, offering you great products, good service, and of course, the lowest prices in the entire country. Visit us in Belize City, Belmopan, San Ignacio Cayo, Honduras, and now in San Pedro, La Isla Bonita. The Barry. Get more? Be less.
Let's be real. Forget the propaganda. Forget the hype. Forget the gimmicks. When it comes to butane, only 2 things really matter: the value you get and how long you can stretch your dollar. That's it. Butane is my business. It's how I feed my family. It's how I send my kids to school. What matters to you matters to me. With NGC, the quality of the butane is better. In fact, customers say tanks last as much as 2 weeks longer. And the cost, it's 1 cost period, whether you pick it up in the north, south, or by Belmopan. 1 supplier, 1 cost, no games. This lets me compete on a fair basis, and I can then pass on better prices to you, my customers. It's as simple as that. I am Stephen Bissett, and I deliver butane in the Belize district. NGC has been good for us in Belize. We welcome the transparency, we welcome the better product, and we welcome the fairness that now prevails.
The National Gas Company Belize Limited, fueling Belize forward.
It don't matter what part of the jewel they come from.
So Belize Estate and Produce Company continued to expand, right? And because they expanded into all sorts of things, they started bringing trucks and cars and what have you. I think the Hillman was the brand, no? The first brand?
Hillman, yes, Hillman and Bedford.
Bedford.
Yeah, Hillman cars, Bedford trucks. We used to sell Bedford trucks up north to the cane people, to the cane farmers.
That's when the roads are starting to be built. And what have you? You're talking about the 1950s, right? 75 years after they came into Belize is when they started to push this expansion. 5 years later. But then in your book in 1958, you described a visit by Mr. Glicksten to Belize.
He died right here.
Head honcho, and he died in Belize. You know, which I found quite ironic. I don't know if you would share my comments, but I found it quite ironic that he would die in Belize, a country that he exploited.
He died. Could be. You know? But at the time, the manager then was a man called Mr. Brownie, B-R-O-W-N-E. Brownie was the manager.
I remember the name very well.
Brownie was the manager at the time, and you know, Mr. Glicksten come to enjoy himself, to see his empire, or part of his empire. And Mr. Brown invited him to St. George's Ski for the weekend, and they were out there. They all had their own boat. All BC managers had their own boats. And the Belize Watch here with Belize Timber.
With Belize Timber, yeah.
At the key, they enjoyed themselves, you know, probably drinking Johnny Walker whiskey. And then, I know what they said the menu was lobster. Night the man dead, sir. So night the man was dead.
Yeah. So the man ate lobster and jumped and he walked a whiskey and died.
No, it was.
That's what you said.
Something, no, I said maybe it was. I knew it was that. But he died, the point is he died the Sunday. The Monday morning, the manager of the sawmill was a man called Cyril Gibbs, was the manager at that time at the sawmill. And he called Mr. Byrne and Mr. Burney if he should cancel 2 years work. I said, no, continue with the work.
So despite the fact that the principal had died, the work continued. No, there was no time off.
No, sir.
To work.
I think he asked if he should shut down today's work. Sir, no, tell. But use timber.
Now, 1958, Hurricane Hattie came some 3 years later, 1961. What did BC experience in 1961? How did BC fare off during Hurricane Hattie?
The lumber yard was a mess. Everything just tumbled right down, stacks and tumbled on stacks. If I mentioned in my book that 1 inch stacks were about 100 tears, 10 tears up.
Yeah.
They were very, very high. And those toppled over, the wind just turned them over.
Could you imagine? Man. Yeah.
Wind just turned them over. And there was mud all over.
Inches of mud, feet of mud, not inches.
Feet of mud is right, feet of mud.
Yeah.
But BC, they know they had the stock insured. And so
Lloyds again.
Yeah. They had the stock insured, and so they just picked an insurance company. And what they did, they hired some men, and they got them electric steel brushes, and began brushing off the mud, and the lumber was right there.
So how long did it take to bring back more or less,
months and months. What they did after the day after they had the manager opened a kitchen under the office downstairs on Map Street. I had the office was right there. I used to be VP master upstairs. They put a kitchen downstairs, and all people who work in the estate, you came and got food for your family.
Okay.
They give a ticket.
And you eat free. I mean.
Oh yeah. They had cooks to make fried jack and Johnny cake and hell.
Okay, nice.
And you just went there and said, how many family in your family? 12. And you get enough food, you want to feed 12.
This famous area we have the tavern, where we have on one end we have the bottling the warehouse, the bottling depot straight ahead, and on the other end the Ford operation.
That's over this side.
And over on that side. And all this area going right through from the riverside now to Freetown Road.
Just timber.
Where Castillo warehouse is, everything, all these houses here were part of this massive lumber yard, right?
Not Castillo. Yeah, no, not Castillo, but on this side.
And this side, on the slaughterhouse?
Yeah.
Side
there was timber from where
Belize Diesel was part of the
before that, where There's a salon right there. A salon is right there. A beauty salon is right there. From there to Freetown Road.
Freetown Road, yeah.
Timber.
The-
Timber. Pine.
Uh-huh.
Dress lumber, rough lumber, dress lumber cars. Because the Mennonites came here in 1957, and they began buying timber like crazy.
Uh-huh.
And that's what the production was all about. And then the lumber was from Map Street going way back.
Yeah.
All right.
Map Street to about Ford there right now.
That is correct, yeah.
Almost to about Belcan Bridge.
Well, not so far.
Well, almost.
Because in that year they had the shipping department.
So, yeah, but I'm saying that was part of the conglomerate.
When they pay barges.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, BC, but the point I'm making is that the Belize Estate and Produce
They own
Company
the land.
owned all the land in the area.
Yeah,
That's the point. That's the point I'm trying to get after. Part was used for the sawmill, part was used for shipping, part was used for this and what have you. But the fact is that they own
They had
the
their
whole
own
area.
They had their own slipway.
Yeah.
And a slipway manager.
No, I can recall. I think we mentioned earlier about not many vehicles being in Belize City. The Glickstons, I think, had a vehicle.
Oh, yeah.
Because there was a Glickston that operated in Belize City, wasn't there?
Huh?
There was a member of the Glickston family that operated in Belize. at
They
the
were
time.
present in Belize.
They were present in Belize, yeah, the family. Because I can remember a gentleman, Mr. Max. I don't know if you remember Mr. Max. Mr. Max used to be the driver for the Glickstons, right?
Oh, yeah, but
I knew him as Mr. Max.
He drove. That's who Max drove. Max drove the manager.
The manager, yeah.
Yeah. And he drove the director because in January, the first week in January, the Glickstone sends down to Belize a director, and he inspects the entire company. And when he gets here, Max have a necktie.
Yes, I remember.
And you drive this one all around,
Yes.
right? And he stayed he stayed in Grantham House. You remember I talk about Grantham House?
Yeah, well, the Grantham House was where?
Yeah?
Where was that?
At the fort. It's still
The
there.
fort, yeah.
You got Baron Bliss tomb, right across the next side.
Oh, I know the house. Yeah, right
It's
across.
called
yeah.
Grantham House.
Grantham House, yeah.
That's where the
From there,
directors stay.
Yeah.
The next house is called House Number 1. The manager of Belize still lives there. He was getting that. Now they're not living anymore. But the last person there was Bilbo Man. That's the residence of the Belize Estate and Produce Company manager. That's the residence for them as long as they are here.
Okay. So he used to drive the Glickstons for the Glickstons.
He drove around the manager.
And drove around the manager.
Yeah.
Well, as I said before, and he used to visit our home at 30 Freetown. I could remember seeing him in his jacket and tie.
Yeah.
I was a little boy at the time.
Yeah.
But I can still remember vaguely.
Once they know the director is the one I met with where he started was a man called Mr. Hart. And when the manager knew Mr. Hart was coming and told him tomorrow morning he will start driving the director, come dressed. And so he had on a necktie and hen with us.
All those colonial days.
And you take it off until the man go?
But let's go back a little bit now to 1957 when the timber boom started to die out. And then I think after that the sawmill was moved because of complaints here in the area. Because the area was going to the suit and what have you. The sawmill was moved to Gabriel's Bank, right?
Yeah.
Which is about
8
miles or so out
the
of
least,
Belize
the least a piece of land from the Gabriel family and Panchori sawmill there.
And some of the old pieces of that sawmill are still there at Gabriel's Bank, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah.
I think I saw some pieces there some years ago, right? Now, in your book, you say that by 1979, and quoting from it, the Glickstons realized that they had bled the country of merchantable timber almost dry and began looking for a buyer for Belize Estate and Produce Company Limited.
That is true.
But they actually bled the country. Why did you use the strong word, bled the country dry?
Because they took out everything they could have found in timber. Everything. And as I said, they were the only ones shipping whole logs to England till Mr. Lindy Rogers stopped them.
Yeah, good for Lindy Rogers to do that. Yeah.
And after that, they were just producing timber. They were just producing, and weren't doing anything. There isn't
Did
one,
they invest in Belize? Did they ever invest in Belize?
Nothing, sir. You can't, there is not one school here, nothing that says made or given to British Honduras by the Gibson Company. Not one thing. Nothing at all.
So they just took everything, typical colonial fashion, took everything.
And when there was nothing left, they sold and gone.
And when there was nothing sold, they shut shop and go home. That's
When
what,
there
that's
was
basically what
when there
happened,
was
right?
nothing left, they never gave away anything either. No, they sold. Don't forget they sold BC to Mr. Delhart.
So they did not give back anything to the people of Belize. The people of Belize benefited anyway beside the little...
Nothing, sir.
So you're talking that from a company that operated in our country for so many years, from 1857, right?
To 1983.
To 1983.
That's when they sold to Mr. Sold Delhart the company.
To 1950, almost 100 years.
And Delhart only bought Belize Estate because...
Over 100 years.
Delhart only bought Belize Estate because he was told that there was a vast amount of pine stumps and pine timber down south, which was true. Mm-hmm. And so he bought the entire company, and he formed a new company called Brown and Ruth, just to extract the pine resin, because he gets in pine in Dublin, in Georgia. All right, and in 2 years' time, that dried up.
So the resin from the pine was done in the southern Belize by Big Creek to the Independence, Mango Creek Independence area.
And
they had some tanks there, right? Didn't they build some tanks to put the resin in?
No, they liquefied it. It was they liquefied it. And put it in drums about so. And then send it to me.
Then send it to you.
That time I was manager. That time I was the manager there already. They sent to me, I would store it there, and then from there they send trucks to take it up to put it up the boat. It went to Georgia.
What did they use the resin for?
They used some tennis shoes, plain soles. Your tennis shoes resin. Yeah.
Okay. No, so.
And in 2 years' time, it dried up.
So how so Mr. Delhart was disappointed?
Must have been.
Must have been disappointed because if in 2 years the whole thing dried up, I'm sure he did not make it.
His person he sent down to do the investigation and to report back to him said you have 20 years of material there that you can extract resin from.
20 years, and it only lasted 2 years. Yeah. Well, I think one of the things we didn't establish is that the Belize Estate and Produce Company not only operated in the Hillbank area and Belize Town, but they bought land in Mango Creek Independence, so they had a whole Mango Creek Independence operation where the pine came from the southern part of the country.
And when they were moved from there, they sold again too. When they were moved from there, they sold everything to the employees. The houses.
They did not give them?
No, sir. The houses, no. They were sold to the employees. We had a surveyor by the name of Mr. Curling. He bought the home that he was living in Mango Creek. He bought it and brought it to Belize.
Hello, Mr. Curling. Wow. So everything was sold, but not necessarily given or patronized.
Sold, but not given. Sold, but everything went back to England, to Gluckston. Everything.
How did they do that? They get that what they sold. How did they take the money? How did that work?
Well, for instance, they had this property. You buy the property, you pay BC, they transfer the property to you.
And then the money that they pay, that they get, they send it to England. So it didn't stay in their coffers here in Belize, or operations in Belize or anything like that. So in 100+ years that BEC, the State and Produce Company operated in Belize, they did not
now you know why
leave anything.
Now you know why I said they bled the company dry?
Now let's look at Mr. Delhart, who got the shot in whatever, and promised 20 years and only got 2, out of it. What did he do after that?
He sold Mr. Bowen the company. But he only sold Mr. Bowen the area of the country in Orange Walk.
That's a Gallon Jog area.
Hillbank area. All right. All the other parts, Mr. Bowen again gave us taxes, including the same area you're talking about here.
So when Mr. Bowen bought the company owed taxes.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And so
in lieu of payment,
they gave the government the land for expansion of the tongue.
And that's why this is called BC area.
So it's called the BC layout, where we are at.
Yeah.
But it was,
and then Mr. Boyne said to the manager then was a man called Duncan. And he said, he told Duncan, he says, tell Mr. Courtney not to do away with the log tools because I will go back into timber. Why did he go back into timber? Because there was no timber. And then he died eventually, crashed.
Well, why did he maintain that dream that he would have gone back into timber? Because I know about Mr. Duncan.
Because at that time, there was still secondary hardwood that you think we could produce, Santa Maria and all those. There was no mahogany, but there was plenty of secondary hardwoods, Santa Maria, Hobio, Palomalato, plenty of those. And so he said he would cut those down, and he opened a sawmill in Galanjog, right? But you didn't do it for long.
Listen to you're talking about Sir Duncan. My mind went back to some of those tugboats, right? Those flat tugboats that used to tow the logs down and tow them out to the ships to be. What became of those tugboats?
They sold them.
Yeah.
When the timber operation closed down in 1983, Mr. Duncan sold all those boats. They sold the Juanito, they sold the Dixie, and they sold another one, Dixie, Juanito, and Aston Felix. They sold them.
Now the name in BEC it was adopted by Mr. Belote, right, or by Mr. Boyne? Because it was Belize Estate and Produce Company Limited. Yeah. They had to re-register now as Belize Estate Company.
The government did that.
The government did that. But who was the owner when that took place?
The owner was
Belote?
Mr. Belote.
Belote was the owner.
Yeah. And they told him you can't have a company registered in another country and work in Belize. And so they wound up the old Belize Fruits Company. And they paid off all people who were in the timber operation. And they only kept myself because I knew about the Lloyds, and I transferred back to Lloyds.
I can get a comment for you, because looking at this thing, Mr. Courtney, right, we got our independence in 1981. In the 1970s, we were very active in advocating for our country's independence at the time, right? In 1979, in your book, you said that the Glickstons realized that they had bled the country of merchantable timber. They had bled it almost dry, you said. And then they were looking for Mr. Belote. Could it be that they felt that after independence, the tables would have shifted?
Shifted.
After the colonial laws would no longer apply, it would be the laws of an independent Belize then that would apply. Did they feel like in any way, I'm just asking a question here, did they feel like in any way things would have shifted and that maybe they would not be able to continue taking advantage of the country in the way they were?
I don't think so.
Okay.
I think they realized that from 1964.
When they catch up after 1964?
When they were told that we want...
That's self-comment.
Before 64, all the company did was to give the government a list of persons coming into work, and then they got work permits.
They never used to pay tax?
Oh yeah, but I talk about work permits to work in Belize because they're expat, they are big Englishmen. Work permits.
Okay.
And 64, they tell them, we won't give you any work permits for all these people. We only allow you two persons, a manager and an accountant. Start treating Belizeans.
Okay, and that was 1964 when we got self-government.
Exactly so.
And we were able to talk with a voice.
Exactly so.
So coming up to 1981, now when we're independent, our voice would have been stronger.
Yeah.
You know, against a company
but they knew this. The white was on the wall from 64. They see what was happening.
64 with the self-government decided.
Of course.
No, let's look at BEC today. So you just left. You left. Let me make sure I get it correct. In 2019. Look back now on the time when you left, where you left BEC at.
Well, first of all, the company is smaller now, because I go there every now and again to get my car serviced. So the company is smaller. There's the Lloyds agency, there's the shipping agency, there's the car department that sells different cars and parts. Well, that's BC now. There is no more cheek little thing. There is no timber operating.
Have you been to the Hillbank Lagoon of late?
No.
Maybe you should. I was there a few days ago.
What's happening there?
The lagoon is still there. It's beautiful as usual, the New River Lagoon. Hillbank is managed by a program for Belize, if I'm not mistaken.
All right.
And I was there, I think, about 10 years ago. It's a beautiful area. There's the old bridge that the tractors they used to cross to bring in the lumber and what have you. There's the remnants of one of the old locomotives.
Mr. Bowen has two companies there, you know. Chanchich Lodge and Galanjog Agro Industries.
Those are up in Galanjog area.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, but I think the Hillbank.
I was there. I went the last time I went there in 2019 when I was doing a survey fellowship in an oil company. And I was surprised to see the deer grazing along with the cows, man.
Yes, deers go and graze with the cow.
Yeah.
Cows. I saw that.
Can't touch them. Can't touch them. They have gave one in the compound.
Yes, I noticed that indeed.
And is the white tail there?
Yes, I saw those when I was there.
Fascinating.
About 10 years ago, 12 years ago.
Fascinating.
But I was in the lagoon itself, like I said a few days ago, and it's still a fascinating experience to be in that lagoon.
Quite true.
And to just imagine how it was in those days, totally forested, you know, the forestation.
And it's all highland, eh?
And it's highland
all
on
highland.
one side, and going that way on the right, on this side, And, so, it was nice talking to you for sure, and I want to congratulate you on your years of service to this country. And
thank you, man. Thank you.
And for the work you have done by recording your experience in the history.
I thought you would have asked me about this.
I noticed you have 2 medals on your chest, Mr. Courtney. One of them I could identify as the OBE.
That's this one.
That's the one there. And the next one is the Meritorious Service Award by the people and government of Belize, which I think are very well deserved.
Thank you very much.
And we should congratulate you on that.
Thank you very much.
Right? We should congratulate you on that. And congratulate you on the sterling service you have given to Belize in many areas, and maybe you might want to elaborate and remind us of some of these areas in which you have served your country. Besides working at Belize Estate and Produce Company Limited, besides recording the history.
I would want to come back and talk to you sometime when I can about football.
For sure. Right. That would be a good thing.
Yeah.
That would be good.
For football, I have my memorabilia.
Because I know that was your passion.
That is correct.
That was your passion.
I took me into FIFA.
Yeah. So we'll have to do another show on football and sports, and maybe we could pitch a little bit of music as well, the musical side of you, because I know you used to play music as well. Right?
But my music is voicing. You know, music has 2 sides. There is the theory part of it, there's the practical part of it. I studied the theory of music and I studied voicing in music.
Meaning singing?
Yes, singing, voicing.
Yeah.
Right?
Did I hear any song that you sing, Mr. Courtney?
Huh?
Did I ever heard any song that you sung? I see you there.
I'm the arranger and lead tenor here.
Okay. This is Blue Notes, 1952. I was 2 years old at the time. The Blue Notes. We got a lot to talk about, Mr. Courtney. So we will talk about the music and the sports in a subsequent show, the music and the football.
I would appreciate that.
Right? But it's good to know how all this came to be, you know, and to reflect back on it, on the history of the Belize Estate and Produce Company Limited, now the Belize Estate Company Limited, BEC. Mr. Courtney, again, thank you so much for...
You're very welcome, sir, anytime.
For going through the history of the Belize Estate and Produce Company Limited, Belize Estate Company Limited. Can you give us an understanding too of Lloyds, how Lloyds operate, you know, for which you were served many years as its agent in Belize, you know. So, all the best to you, sir.
Yeah.
Thank you so much.
You're very welcome, Mr. Dr. Boone, by any time.
Well, thank you, Mr. Courtney, again for talking with me. I can tell that you certainly love Belize, and you have been serving Belize in so many capacities. And like myself, I love this country. Belize is Belize. It's all sweet, Belize.
To the bone, sir.
To the bone, right?
That's me.
And its history. Its history is so rich, and whatever we could learn from it is important, because that's what makes us who we are, our history, our past, Our past impacts our present, and because we understand our past and the impact it has on our present, then we can safely plan our future. And it's all wrapped up in one word called love, and so we say, Belize and beyond, thanks for choosing love.
Belize Watch. Knowledge of the past, impacting the present, building the future.
Celebration time. It don't matter what part of the jewel they come from. You that you